Hello. In this video, I read out the Japanese folktales in English. I would be happy if you could press the channel subscription and thumbs up now. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in a place called Naniwa in the land of Setsu, a couple lived. They didn't have any children, so they went to pray to the Sumiyoshi shrine priest, and pleaded with all their hearts. Please give us a child. Even a child as small as a finger would be fine. And soon after, the wife became a wife. Our wish has been granted, said the couple joyfully, and they waited for the day when the child would be born, either today or tomorrow. Soon after, the wife gave birth to a little baby boy. However, he was very small, and really was only the size of a finger. When we said, even if the baby is the size of a finger, the emperor gave us a baby just the size of a finger. The couple laughed and raised the child with care. However, the baby still never grew any bigger than a finger. The couple gave up and named the child Isunboshi. Even when Isunboshi turned 5, he still hadn't grown any taller. Even when he turned 7, the same thing happened. Even when he turned 10, he was still Isunboshi. As Isunboshi was walking along the mountain, the children of the countryside gathered around him and started teasing him, saying things like, "Hey, there's a little kid walking around. Don't let him step on you. I'll pick you up and bite you down. You little kid. You little kid." Isunboshi was quiet, but just smiled. Isunboshi turned 16. One day, he went up to his mother and father and said, "Please, give me some free time." His father was surprised and asked, "Why do you say that?" Isunboshi made a cute face and said, "I'm going to climb up to Kyoto now." "What are you planning to do by going up to Kyoto?" Kyoto is the number 1 palace in Japan, where the angels live, and there are many interesting jobs there. I think I'll go there and try my hand at some yummy food. His father nodded and said, "Okay, then go ahead." Isunboshi was very happy, and immediately began getting ready for the trip. First, his mother gave him a quilt, and he made a pot out of wheat straw, which he tied around his shoulder. Then he put the new bowl boat, the new chopsticks, and set off from the shore of Sumiyoshi. His father and mother came to see him off at the beach. "Father, mother, we'll be off then," said Isunboshi, and as he started rowing the boat, father and mother said, "Please help us get to work." "Yes, we'll definitely get to work," Isunboshi replied. The boat went up the Yodo River a little each day. But because the boat was small, when there was a strong wind or it rained and the water level rose, the boat often came close to tipping over. At such times, there was nothing else to do, so we stopped the boat between the stones or in the shade of a shingle to rest. In this way, after about a month, we finally arrived at a place called Kyoto near Itoba. When we disembarked from the boat at the bridge, we soon arrived at the town of Kyoto. From Gojo, Shiyo, to Sanjo, there were bustling towns in succession, with horses and carriages passing by constantly, and countless people. Kyoto is indeed the most lively city in Japan, as it is. Isunboshi thought to himself as he walked, dodging the footwear of the royals. When he reached Sanjo, among the many splendid castles lined up, there was one that stood out the most. Isunboshi thought, to do anything, you must first become a servant of some great person, and then gradually work your way up. This must be the house of the greatest person. Thinking this, he went into the castle. After walking a long way along the wide gravel path, he stood in front of a large castle. Sure enough, this was the third palace, and the house of a great lord. At that moment, Isunboshi yelled as loud as he could, "Excuse me. But it seemed that no one heard him, and no one came out, so this time he yelled even louder, "Excuse me." Just as the third Isunboshi cried out, "Excuse me," a lord who had just come to the hall intending to go out somewhere, heard the voice and came out to have a look. However, no one was there. Thinking it was strange, he looked around and found a pea-sized man, lying on his back, in the shadow of his legs, which were lined up in his shoes. The Lord was surprised and said, "Are you the one who called?" Quote, "Yes, it's me. Who are you?" "I'm Isunbo, who came here without knowing anything." "I see, you must be Isunbo. So why did you come to my mansion?" "I came all the way to Kyoto because I wanted to work. I'll do my best, so please use me at the mansion," Isunbo said. This and bowed. The Lord laughed and said, "You're an interesting boy. All right, I'll use you." And he left him at the mansion. After Isunboshi began to be used at the prince's house, even though he was small, he worked hard and diligently. He was very smart and intelligent, so everyone loved him and called out, "Isunboshi, Isunboshi," and doted on him. There was a cute princess who was 13 years old at the house. Isunboshi loved her very much. The princess was also very fond of Isunboshi, and wherever she went she would accompany him, calling, "Isunboshi, Isunboshi," as they gradually got along, because they were both children. After all, they eventually became like friends, and sometimes they would fight, play tricks on each other, and cry and laugh. One day they fought again, and Isunboshi lost. To hide his frustration, Isunboshi waited quietly for an opportunity when the princess was napping, and ate all the sweets that the prince had given him, and rubbed the remaining powder on the edge of the princess's sleeping mouth. Then he took the empty bag of sweets in his hands, and went out to the middle of the garden, and ran away, crying loudly on purpose. Hearing the voice, the prince came out to the porch and asked, "Isunboshi, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Isunboshi then said in a very sad voice, "The princess hit me, and then she took all the sweets that the prince had given her and ate them all." The prince was shocked, and went to the princess's room to find her asleep, with a lot of sweet powder on the edge of her mouth. The prince became very angry, and called his mother, scolding her severely, saying, "Why did you make the princess do such bad business behavior?" But the mother, being a bit of a mean person, was very upset that she had been scolded for the princess. To hide her frustration, she made up all sorts of things that didn't even happen, and so the princess wouldn't meet the grandfather's daughter, and she listed all sorts of bad things she had done to her, and she told him, "No matter how much I try to stop her, she just makes fun of me and doesn't listen to me." The father became even more angry, and told Isunbo to kick the princess out of the house and throw her away somewhere far away. Isunbo started saying crazy things, and the princess started being kicked out, so he became very annoyed. So he decided to accompany the princess wherever she went, and first he wanted to take her to her father's house in Naniwa, so he got on a boat from the pier. Soon after, there was a terrible storm, and the boat was swept down the river toward the sea. Then, swept along by the wind, they ended up living on the third wave, and on the fourth day they arrived at an island. The island was filled with strange flowers and trees that he had never heard of before, and he couldn't see anything that looked like humans, so he didn't know if people lived there or not. Then Isunboshi took the princess up to the island, and as he walked around looking around, two ogres suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Then it suddenly jumped on the princess, and tried to eat her in one bite. The princess was so surprised that she lost consciousness. Seeing this, the owl plucked out the head of the straw hat, and jumped right in front of the ogre. Then, shouting as loud as he could, "Who do you think this is? It is the daughter of the third lord. If you do anything rude, this owl will not die." The two ogres were surprised by the owl's voice, and when they looked closely, they saw a pea-sized boy standing at their feet, boasting and standing tall. The ogre laughed heartily. "What? It's such a bean. This is such a hassle, I'll just drink it." As soon as he said this, one of the ogres picked up the Isun hat and swallowed it in one big gulp. The Isun hat, still holding its arm, slid smoothly into the ogre's stomach. Once inside, it ran around wildly inside the stomach, prickling and stinging at its body. The ogre was in pain. "Ah, it hurts. Ah, it hurts. This is unbearable." He rolled around on his body, trembling. Then, as he gave a snort of rage as he was about to swell up, the Isun hat jumped out of his mouth again. He then raised his arm and attacked the ogre again. Then the other ogre said, "What a naughty little boy," and grabbed Isunboshi again, and swallowed him open-mouthed. As he was being swallowed, this time it quickly jumped up, and slipped out of the throat hole into the nose hole, and then crawled up behind the ogre, and repeatedly poked at the ogre's eyes. Then the ogre instinctively cried out, "Ouch!" And as he jumped up, the hat jumped out of his eye with a sudden jerk. The ogre was shocked, thinking that his eyes had escaped, and cried out, "Oh no, oh no," and ran away without looking back. Then the other ogre followed, calling, "You little dog! Run, run!" And, "Ha ha, you weakling," said Isunboshi, gazing fondly at the fleeing ogre's figure. "Oh dear, what a disaster," he exclaimed, picking up the lying princess and treating her kindly. When the princess regained her composure and tried to stand up, a small earthenware ball rolled down from the bottom of her skirt. "Oh, look, here's something," said the princess, picking it up and showing it to the public. Taking the mallet in his hand, Isunboshi said, "This is the mallet that the ogre forgot. If you shake it, anything you want will come out. Look, I'll show you my talents right here and now." Saying this, Isunboshi raised his mallet and said, "Isunboshi, grow big. Become a normal person." With one shake, his height grew 1 scoop. With a second shake, he grew 3 scoops, and by the third time he had grown into a fine man nearly 6 scoops long. Each time the princess's eyes would widen. My. The hat had grown so big that he was so happy that he stood up and squatted, looked back and looked forward, and looked at his own body with curiosity, but after he had looked around, he suddenly remembered that he hadn't eaten anything in 3 days and was hungry. So he quickly shook his hammer in the house and brought out a feast that was too much to eat, and he and the princess ate together happily. After he had eaten the feast, he struck out various treasures, such as goldsmiths, coral, lapis lazuli, and agate. Finally, they launched a big ship, loaded all their treasures onto it, and the two of them, the princess and the two of them, soon returned to Japan. The rumor that Isunbo had brought the princess, the ogre had retrieved the treasures from his island, and returned happily, quickly spread, and before long it had reached the angel's ears. One day, the angel looked at Isunbo, and was indeed a noble and beautiful creature, so that he must have been something special, and had his guardians examine him closely. So it turned out that Isunboshi's grandfather was a great man, called the middle father of Horikawa, and that his father was a child born to him who had been banished to the countryside by a wicked beast, and that his mother was also originally a noblewoman called the Lady of Fushimi, so they were also the descendants of great men. The angel immediately bestowed upon Isunboshi a title, and called him the Lady of Horikawa. with the permission of the third lord of the palace once again. The Lady of Horikawa married the princess. Then he called for his father and mother from all over the land of the dead, and the whole house gathered together, and spent a joyful time together. That's that.